I am here because I'm a dumb bitch and I read a smart book and I want to talk about it. I haven't done like a book report kind of thing since high school, but I really felt something reading this book and I just want to talk about it because I loved it. I loved it and hated it like a lot, but I just feel the need to have a chat about it. This book is titled One, No One, and 100,000. It was published in 1926 by a man named Luigi Pirandello, who was a Nobel Prize winner for his bold and ingenious revival of the dramatic and scenic arts. In this story, we follow the main protagonist, whose name is Vitangelo Moscata. He's a 28-year-old man who essentially has done nothing with his life. He inherited everything from his late father, which included a bank and ownership of a bank and a couple of properties. The book begins with Vitangelo looking at himself in the mirror, and his wife asks why, and he says, "Oh, my nose hurts and I'm just trying to figure out why." And she said, "Oh, I thought you were looking to see which side hangs lower," and points out that the right side of his nose hangs lower than the left. This to him is a crazy revelation. He's so confused and he's never realized this about himself. And this turns into this snowball effect where he's like, oh my god, I never saw this about myself. And then he starts realizing all these other aspects of himself that he's never noticed before, like the way that his eyebrows are or the way that his legs bow, things like that. And he then begins to question himself in the public eye and how other people see him. And if he's never noticed these things about himself, how many aspects of his appearance have other people noticed, and how is he portrayed in their minds? So this starts off one of his first experiments. He does a lot of experiments on people to just pull apart the that he is in their minds. He wants to create, just completely disrupt who they think he is. But the first one he mostly does on himself. In this first experiment, he tries to see himself as a stranger would. He tries to watch himself from an outsider's perspective and tries to view what he would look like in the mind of someone else. Says, "Others are not in me at all. For others who look from without my ideas, my feelings have a nose, my nose, and they have a pair of eyes, my eyes, which I do not see, but for which they see. What relation is there between my ideas and my nose? For me, none whatever. I do not think with my nose, nor am I conscious of my nose when I think. But others who cannot see my ideas within me, but who can see my nose without? For others, there is so intimate a relation between my ideas and my nose that if the former, let us say, were very serious, while the latter was mirth-provoking by reason of its shape, they would burst out laughing. As I ran on like this, a fresh anxiety laid hold of me. The realization that I should not be able, while living, to depict myself to myself in the actions of my life, to see myself as others saw me, to set my body off in front of me and see it living like the body of another. When I took up my position in front of a mirror, something like a lull occurred inside me. All spontaneity vanished. Every gesture impressed me as being fictitious or a repetition. I could not see myself live." After this first experiment, he dives into thinking about the fact that he cannot see himself in such a way. He cannot see himself without himself. And so instead, he tries to find out who he is in the minds of others, at least to those closest to me, and to amuse myself by maliciously decomposing the I that I was to them. Basically, he just starts doing all of these little experiments on people to try and fuck with their heads, and he tries to do things that they do not or would not expect him to do because he wants to completely destroy who he is in their minds. He also notes that the versions of himself within other people's minds, they're not false, they're just a different reality to his own. And just because it's not his reality doesn't mean it's not their reality. which means that it's not true. It's just not what he believes to be true. And he talks about that here. If there were only outside of us, for you and for me, if there were only a Mrs. My reality and a Mrs. Your reality, I mean self-existent, unvarying, unmutable, there isn't. There is in me and for me a reality that is mine, which I confer upon myself, a reality that is yours in you and for you, that which you confer upon yourself. And these are never the same, never for me or for you. And then, my friend, we must console ourselves with this reflection, that mine is no truer than yours, and that they endure but for what a moment, both yours and mine. I love this book. One of the most interesting parts for me personally was the fact that he registers that for him, he's one person, and for his wife, he's someone else. And he starts to like figure out that the him that his wife knows is not him at all. And he becomes jealous of this like shadow version of himself that he doesn't know. And he starts to like dissociate between the two. She calls him Genge. Sorry if I completely butcher that. She calls him Genge. Her Genge. Dear Genge. Not only is he jealous of this dear Genge, but he gets bothered by the way that his wife talks about him and the way that his wife thinks about him as this big silly. He then dives into how people see him professionally, and after a bit of reflection of the way that people saw his father and now therefore him, he realizes that people see him as a usurer. I didn't know what that was for the entire time that I read this book. I could have just Googled it, but for some reason I didn't. Because I'm a dumb bitch, you know? But it's basically a person who lends money at unreasonably high rates of interest. And after this, he like really sets out to dismantle who he is in the minds of other people. You know, it's full of shenanigans. Some we don't all agree with. He basically just like acts in every single way that no one would expect him to act in. He's always been this like easygoing, chill guy who owns a bank. And he sort of just lets people run this bank for him. But all of a sudden he just is like, I don't want to be a usurer anymore, and I don't want to be a part of this bank anymore, so I'm going to take my name off of it. And they're like, you can't take the name off the bank. That's like the name of the bank, you know? He just like fully destroys everything. The last two books, so basically this single book is filled with 8 books, but the last 2 books they like completely change the writing style. So stylistically, it was originally like a philosophical rambling kind of thing where this guy is just like losing it and taking you along on the journey. But the last 2 is sort of, it becomes more narrative based, and it's very interesting. It moves very quickly after that. In this part, he goes to visit his wife's friend, Anne Rosa, at an abbey. While they're at this abbey, he's like waiting for her. She comes in from the garden, she's holding a bunch of flowers. She's sort of fumbling around with the flowers and drops her purse, and a gun goes off. She shoots herself in the foot. While she's bedridden, he visits her a whole bunch, and she is like, ha ha ha, how funny, people think that gun was for you, but no, I just have it. It's like a fun accessory. And so Vitangelo is like, lol, okay. And then he continues to visit her a whole bunch because she's bedridden, she can't go anywhere. So he just hangs out with her a whole bunch. And then he's like, am I falling in love with her? Like, my wife's best friend, am I falling in love with her? And they like have all these deep conversations, and he's like, is she falling in love with me? And he explains to her his thought process and like where his mind is at with the whole thing of like identity and self. And then after that conversation, they have this romantic stare off, and then he's like, oh my god, she is in love with me. And so she pulls him in close and then shoots him in the chest. And I was like, oh, what? But yeah, he gets shot, he survives. He tells the judge that she didn't mean to do it and like gets her acquitted and everything. But he then, like, he goes into the court and he's wearing this like outrageous outfit, and people are like, what is going on? Because he's just decided that appearances don't matter anymore. He's no longer going to look at himself in the mirror. He's not interested in himself or like who he is or identity or memories or anything anymore. He just lives moment by moment. And this is what his like the last paragraph part says. The city is far away. There comes to me occasionally upon the vesper calm the sound of its bells. I, however, no longer hear those bells within me, but without, ringing for themselves and perhaps trembling with joy in their resounding cavities. In the beautiful blue sky, filled with a warm sun, to the twittering of swallows, or swaying heavily to the wind and cloud. So high, in their aerial belfries. To think of death, to pray. It may be that there is one who yet has need of this, and it is to his need that the bells give voice. I no longer have such need, for the reason that I am dying every instant, and being born anew, and without memories, alive and whole, no longer in myself, but in everything outside. I'd like to start off by saying that this book, for me, was a mission to get through. I can normally read something like this rather quickly, but the first half took me a little over a week to read, and then the second half I finished in 3 hours. I think it's just like the language, because it's written in quite an older like sentence structure and style of just like phrasing sentences. I didn't quite like capture everything as easily as I normally do reading books that were written today. It's also just like complex philosophical ideas that I feel like I had to read a bit and then take a break and really take that in and think about it a lot, which I feel like is the best way to read this book. Like, it's not, you're not supposed to rush through something like this. It's kind of is supposed to be like a read a bit, think about it, take it in, really like mull over and digest each of the ideas that he is expressing. The first part of this book is overarchingly a philosophical piece about identity and self and how you can never truly know yourself or anyone around you. He fully, I think, to the best of his ability, really dives into that concept and how you can try your best, but there is no way that you can know yourself 100%. You can never see yourself without your thoughts. You can never meet yourself for the first time, and you will just never know who you are from someone else's perspective. It's just so interesting. And then he then dives into how you can never really know anyone else. I don't often read philosophy. I mostly read for escapism, not to like pull apart my reality and like review it and then put it back together again. I really did thoroughly enjoy this book though, just like how it expresses the fact that you can never really control how anyone else sees you, and you can do whatever you can to the best of your ability to try and make yourself be perceived a certain way, but to each individual person you meet, that version of you that they see is always going to be ingrained in their brain. Like, you can't really change who they think you are. As someone with social anxiety, this book was weirdly comforting to me. I don't know what that says about me, that a book about a man losing his mind is comforting. But anyway, it was bizarrely comforting to me, just because in my own personal experience with social anxiety and the way that I have dealt with my social anxiety was that I was always trying to control how other people saw me and trying to make them like a version of me that may not have been true to myself, but was a version that I knew that they liked. And I've always, like, in the past, I've been frustrated by the fact that that person doesn't know me then, and they don't know the real me. They only know a version of me that they have made up in their own minds. Even people that I've been like 100% myself around as much as I can be, they still get frustrated that they don't really know the real me, whatever that is. But this book has made me realize that they do know a real me. It's just not the real me that I know. And every person has a different reality of who I am in their heads. So if I've done something shitty to them, they know me as a shitty person. And if I've done really good things for them, they know me as a good person. But none of those realities are 100% wrong or 100% right. They're just that individual person's reality. Basically, I find this comforting because I can only do what I can to present myself in the way that I want to be presented, in the way that I feel is true to myself. If each person reacts to that differently, then I just have to kind of learn to deal with that. There's nothing I can really do about it. And that is okay, and it's something that I have to learn to live with. Anyway, that was my thoughts on this book. If you have watched up until now, thanks for still being here. Thanks for listening to my ramblings, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Okay, bye.